Good evening to everybody. Welcome to the Maternity and Midwifery Hour. This is the 5th series and this is number 3 episode. So welcome indeed to everybody. I know that many of you are regular viewers and some of you might be new. And if you are, welcome to this evening. I think it's going to be a really interesting evening. My name's Sue Macdonald and I'm the curator of the Maternity and Midwifery Hour and also the Maternity and Midwifery Festivals. And it's my pleasure to be chairing tonight. This is a treat for me. It really is. Now, many of you who've been following us will know that these sessions were designed during the COVID pandemic as a way of connecting student midwives, maternity service support workers, doulas, people who wanted to become midwives, all together, because it was a time when it was very difficult for people to get together and get information and continuing professional development. And this was a really good way of doing it. Also, just to reinforce for you, all of these sessions are recorded, just as all of the things for the Maternity and Midwifery Forum are recorded. So if you miss anything or, you get a crisis at home, don't panic, because you'll be able to get the recording and catch up later if that happens. And it's a fantastic resource if you're doing for those who are students, if you're doing a project or if you're a midwife doing a further course. Lots and lots of information to access. So thank you to Matflix, the video streaming from maternity experts who underpin all of this. And it really is good. I almost forgot that people doing revalidation, also good for that, just to keep yourself up to date. Tonight, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Deepa Santhosh and Sally Pezaro. And we're going to be looking at nurturing students and qualified midwives. So it's going to be really interesting. I know for many of you, you need a bit of nurturing. We all need a bit of nurturing. And this is what we're going to talk about this evening. But before we do that, we're going to put our guests on the spot, as we like to do, and ask them to share with us a moment of the week. And I'll start with Sally, who probably wasn't expecting it. For a nice
fine,
I'm
ready. Well, I want to choose 2, so that's just not fair. The Student Nursing Times Awards were on Monday, and I was judging them, and I was judging the Student Midwife of the Year category.
Wow.
So for me, seeing all those amazing student midwives, and I mean, it was just incredible, the caliber of candidate that came forward to share with us what they've been doing and how amazing they were. Really difficult to choose just one winner, but I'm really, really looking forward to celebrating on the night with them. And then today, saying goodbye to the Mary C. Cole Awards as they're now transferring to the Florence Nightingale Foundation and the Mary C. Cole Trust. So it was kind of a passing on of the baton with the Mary C. Cole Awards, which I'm really passionate about as well. So there's my two amazing moments of this week.
Oh, wow. And of course, the Mary C. Cole has been a huge feature in developing leadership and leadership skills for midwives as well.
And championing inequalities and the need for diversity and supporting those from BAME communities to enjoy healthier outcomes, better outcomes.
No, that's great. Well, you've passed your baton, or yes. slightly.
I'm still mentoring, but yes, no longer Fabulous. The steering group as it was.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for sharing those moments. We'll move to Deepa now. Deepa, do you have a moment to share?
Mine is a very ordinary, everyday student midwives experience. I walked into my first placement for year 2. My head, I was still a year 1, but I walked into it. I thought I'd be smart. I signed up for a night shift and I thought, let me just go in gently. The system is smarter than me. So it was a whirlwind. I went in and then I don't know when I came out, it was morning. So it was a whirlwind. But the number of women who said the care has been amazing. We don't know how you do it, but thank you so much for taking care of us. And I think that kind of made, after coming out exhausted, those words still lingering in your head, and it feels really amazing. And my mentor was really wonderful. She made sure I had my 1-hour break. She wouldn't for it. Yeah, and I had water with me all the time, so that helped as well. So yes, it was exhausting, but my first placement night.
Fabulous, fabulous. And sometimes the second year can be quite a challenge as well, because it's kind of, you're going out of different things, aren't you? So congratulations, and thank you for sharing that. It's lovely, because I think that gives you a real flavour of what it is to be a midwife when you've had a really hard shift, but the women or the families, someone's going to say to you, oh, thank you. And that means more than anything, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Really very
absolutely.
positive. It's what we need. It's what we need. Now, I do thank you both to our speakers. We are moving back to them, so stay tuned, as it were. But I just thought I'd send some good wishes to anyone. Actually, I keep hearing a bit about people who've had COVID, and maybe not so bad, maybe a little bad. But I heard it from a friend yesterday who said he was perfectly fine, felt he had a cold, and then suddenly, whoosh, it hit him. And it really, the description sounded awful. So please take care. If you've got COVID, take care of yourselves and look after people. If you're looking after someone with it, look after them well. And we're sending some healing thoughts to people with long COVID, which is awful as well. And I think the issue at the moment in the health service is quite complex, because there's a feeling that it's kind of all over, only it's not. Because those of us in the health service know that it's not over. Also, it's people still getting the infection, still dying sadly, or being very poorly. And that makes it very hard on the rest of the service, because obviously there's people off sick or people who are suffering from long COVID, and it's still hard. And it's midwives and student midwives and all of those in the maternity service. Actually, don't forget our obstetrical and pediatric colleagues who are also there, who are also having to kind of work the stress. So I would want to say a big thank you to everybody, but also look after yourselves. If I don't say it before the end of the day, look after yourselves. And moving on a little bit to the news, there seems to be a lot in the news about carbon dioxide and gas prices. And I'm sure some people are going to be very worried about that sort of thing, because that affects your financial well-being. Lot about the politics and everything. And I was just trying to focus more on things that were very maternity and midwifery. And I turned to my little book. This is my favorite book at the moment, Nurturing Maternity Staff. I'm not very far through it, but it's by one of the speakers we had a few weeks back, Jan Smith, who has written this, and it's really good. And I'd commend it to anybody who can beg, borrow, steal not steal a copy, borrow a copy if you can. Because I think I'm going to enjoy it. It does give you a little health warning to say it's not going to be necessarily comfortable reading all the way through. But then sometimes the good books do take you a little up and down journey, don't they? So I'm looking forward to that. But then this arrived on my desk, Safety, Equity and Engagement in Maternity Service, from the Healthcare Commission. So that's kind of a Care Quality Commission, I should say, sorry. And that kind of pushed my book out of my way, because this is very much about the maternity services. And they're highlighting that though there are many maternity services who are doing very well and providing excellent care, just as described by Deepa there are still some that need to illustrate their learning from when they don't get things quite right. And in particular, they've highlighted the challenges in maternity care for women from Black and minority ethnic groups, and the fact they're still experiencing less equitable care, and they're still being admitted more after their childbirth experience, or on several occasions. And the report, I've only skimmed through it first, but I shall read it in depth and report more to you next week. But I'd recommend, it's on your list of resources, I'd recommend you get a copy. It's not so long, it's only 7 pages or so it's not too difficult to read. Very clear, they highlight all the things that we need, like effective team working and culture, leadership, good leadership, and we've talked about that for a long time, and we really need that. Learning and improvement, learning from your mistakes when you don't get things right, being very honest with people, and then trying to make things better for the next woman, baby, family. Then there's a bit about team training, how we all should be doing the skills drills all together. We've been doing that for a while, but Some places aren't doing it as well as others. Emphasizing equity in maternity services, and through that, by doing things like reaching out and reassuring pregnant women from Black and minority ethnic groups with tailored communications, so they know they are important, they need their care. And another action that I've kind of popped out at me, ensuring hospitals discuss vitamins, supplements, and nutrition in pregnancy with all women. Now, that sounds like something you do all the time, but I know if you're very busy, and over the last year, it's been kind of different. Maybe some of the things that we always used to do, like talking about what you should be eating, and if you're a vegetarian, you need this additional vitamins and that sort of thing. Maybe we need to just revisit, make sure we're getting it right. And continuity of carer, which we'll be looking at in another couple of weeks. It's a sort of ongoing discussion for us. Very important for women and for families in making sure they get good care and good continuity and quality. And then right at the end, there's a whole section about maternity voices, partnership and engagement, and really getting women's voices out there, which is really important. So that, I would suggest, is going to be your bedtime reading. So that's going to be my bedtime reading. Now it's for your bedtime reading too. Okay, and the other, just to reinforce or reiterate that there is a resources page which has got some references. There's some updated guidance papers from the Royal College of Midwives. There's also something from the World Health Organization. There's something from Sally, and there's something from Deepa. And Deepa has got this. Does that seem good? I have to come back a bit. Which is quite nice, and it's in a form that you can copy and you can stick on your walls to stay hydrated. So it sounds very simple, but we're going to hear soon it wasn't as simple maybe to do. So that's it for me. I'm going to move now, exactly on time, just to say that we know midwives are busy. We've been busy forever. We know we're short of midwives. We've had the discussion for as long as I can remember that we need at least 3,500 midwives. I feel as though we need a lot more. And I'm sure those of you out there feel the same, whatever country you're in. And I know we have many people from other countries other than the UK. And we've been busy, and we felt it very much so over this last 2 years. And with some staff being redeployed, doing immunisations, for example, and some sick, sometimes midwives are having to balance their workload. And you know, when midwives are balancing their workload and looking after women, sometimes they don't look after themselves, and sometimes they need their colleagues to help them look after themselves. So in this session, we're going to look at some of the implications of not supporting staff and some strategies that you can use with yourself and with your colleagues. So I'm going to start off with introducing Deepa Santhosh, who many of you will know because she's a very active tweeter and probably on all sorts of other social media as well. She's a student midwife doing her pre-reg masters in midwifery at Oxford Brookes. She's also a birth educator, doula, hypnobirthing practitioner and breastfeeding specialist. She started her career as the first doula and birth activist in Chennai, India in 2009, then moved here to London in 2011. And she's worked for over 10 years, in maternity care and infant feeding, including leading the Baby Friendly project for London Trust. And she's particularly interested in optimizing normality in maternity care using quality improvement techniques to enhance every family's experience of maternity services. But we've introduced her, or invited her here to talk about some little activity she got up to over the last few months. So Deepa, welcome.
Thank you, Sue. That was an amazing introduction.
Not at all. I know that you started a campaign. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what started it.
It was June, and it was we're near 30 degrees, and I was in community at that point in time, and I had my cold water bottle with me, and I was seeing how much water we were drinking. And then it really struck me that when I was on delivery suite, I always saw that the water bottles were outside and not in the rooms. And in a previous experience as well, this was something that midwives on delivery suite always said, that they could not take their water bottles inside when they were facilitating about supporting a mum. And then I just asked around my friends, my classmates, and they did confirm to me that no, they could not take their water bottle inside. And many of them were struggling with thirst, feeling tired, urinary tract infections, and things like that. That's what actually triggered the campaign, because I heard from quite a few of them saying they could not have something as basic as water to drink.
And it does sound really basic, doesn't it? So, I mean, how did you go about starting it?
So what I did was, I love Twitter. So I ran a survey on Twitter, and over 200 student midwives responded to it, which shocked me, but it was just a small survey, and about 50% of them said, no, we don't have access to drinking water. I did the same thing on Facebook and other social media networks, and I got shocking messages. A newly qualified midwife who is actually on the postnatal ward, messaged me to say there was obviously a long postnatal ward. They weren't allowed to have bottles, in the midwife station or anywhere, only in the staff room. And there were only 4 people who could be in the staff room at one point of time. So throughout the entire 12-hour shift, she didn't have any water. She had had time off because of UTIs. She's very scared of getting another one and started experiencing flank pain and was worried about her kidneys.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, so these were the sort of, I even had messages from midwives sending me the picture of their bottle and how much they managed to drink, like 100 mils over a whole shift.
Gosh.
So these were shocking messages. One person said that the bottles that were outside the rooms were taken away and kept, and they were told they can only keep it in their bags in the staff room. So across the country, I received a number of messages that said exactly the same thing.
Gosh, that's amazing. I mean, I've heard of, I heard something there was a discussion on Twitter a few days ago where someone said they had their water bottle. I have mine to illustrate. These are very good. They keep it nice and cold, but no good if you're not allowed to take them with you. But someone said, my bottle was taken away because the person in charge decided I shouldn't have any water. So they threw the bottle away. And then there was a whole flurry of people saying, yes, that happened to me. And yes, it was my own bottle. It was one of these, they're not tuppence halfpenny, but some people have an ordinary plastic bottle, whatever. But that's
extraordinary.
So what was your next step after you had all this data? And I just imagine you tippy-tapping all with you. I don't know if you used spreadsheets or anything like that.
Well, I was really upset and I was constantly thinking about it. I started tweeting a series of tweets to first of all tell people that the water is their right. It's a human right, and it's of utmost importance that they need it and they can't take no for an answer. It was almost like advocating for midwives. We need to start with ourselves first. So I highlighted what dehydration can cause. You can lose your cognitive abilities. One person messaged me to said she actually collapsed in the room. She didn't have any water. So I started doing a series of Twitter tweets, and then I decided to write a letter. So I formally put it in writing, and I wrote about all of this to the RCM. I wrote to Professor Jacqueline Dunkley-Bent, the Chief Midwifery Officer, also wrote to CQC and NHS England. Because normally the reasons that people tell you is, well, the CQC does not want us to have water bottles everywhere, or they would say it's an infection control risk, And particularly during COVID, they said that, well, you having to take your mask off, so you cannot have water in the room. So then I went about the task of negating each one of those reasons. The CQC was very good. They tweeted straight away to say that they encourage all healthcare professionals, midwives, nurses, to have water with them throughout their shift. Professor Jacqueline Dunkley-Bent wrote to me to say that she was aggrieved to hear of this, and she put out a statement. RCM followed that. They put out a statement as well, because in their survey last year, it was exactly the same thing. More than 50% of midwives said that they were dehydrated throughout the shift. So what happened from that letter was that at the top level, people started putting out these statements. I also shared my letter with everyone so they could use it. So some student midwives actually took copies of those letters and gave it to their ward managers to tell them why it's really important that they have their water bottles with them and they need them.
Right. Okay. That sounds like a lot of work and a lot of activity, and you weren't being fobbed off with anything, Deepa.
No, it's scary. You can get all sorts of responses, but once you have that fire, that this is something really basic, it's a human right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So many people, not knowing what to do about it. And it's actually their health and safety. I mean, as an employer, every trust has a responsibility. They can't say no to that. And that was what I was trying to reiterate. In fact, my own academic lead, she was amazing. As soon as she heard about it, she wrote immediately to the ward manager. And surprisingly enough, generally, the senior people like ward managers, matrons, they don't know about it. And she was quite shocked that this was happening. And immediately we got an email, all staff and students, we got an email saying, absolutely, you can take your water with you wherever you are, whether on delivery suite or postnatal ward. So it was quite rewarding.
Yeah. So how about, well, I'd say, what do you think the impact has been throughout? Do you think if you did a survey now, do you think you'd be finding the same thing in maternity? Because I think you've concentrated your activities very much, and you chose the people brilliantly to kind of really spearhead the initiative through. And as I said, it can sound like it's a basic human right, and it's a bit surprising that people were being refused water. And you kind of think, well, where's that come from? Is it because we as midwives mustn't be seen like normal humans that might need a drink or something to eat or going to the loo or all the things that humans have to do?
It's really strange. Sometimes I think it's the culture of the place where you're working at. Sometimes it can be like a power thing. And I believe in flat hierarchies. I believe in compassionate leadership. And something as basic as water is quite stupendous to think, how can you deny a person who's working 13-hour shifts, water for their needs? So yes, it was quite shocking. It's quite basic, but I'm really glad that, statements were put out, and I hope that has made an overall impact on people, midwives, student midwives, nurses even, because the same thing, can have their water.
I think you're going to have to be harnessed by our nursing colleagues also, and our medical colleagues, because I think that's where the tweet yesterday, a couple of days ago, I saw. But okay, I'll put you on the spot now, Deepa. What next? There
are lots of basic issues. We all know that in maternity. I'd like to control what we can, at what we're doing at our level. Things like, wearing the right shoes. And that's, again, something that I'm really passionate about. It's compared to actually being on a marathon, like the shifts that we do, the number of steps, like 20,000 steps. And the right shoes are really important. I'm very fortunate where I train, we're allowed to wear, running shoes, absolutely no problem. Of course, it has to be a certain color and things like that. But, is really important, because your feet, they can, be so painful, and wearing the right shoe makes a big difference. That would be another issue.
Well, I think as a Pisces, I'm always concerned with my feet. It's one of the things about Piscean. So Pisceans out there, listen to Deepa and her feet message, because it is really important. And it sounds like something that could be carried forward brilliantly. Thank you so much. Now, Deepa, I'm going to let you have a little rest now. And any of you out there who have a question for Deepa, who's really moved this. I mean, it sounds a very straightforward thing to do. It took a huge amount of thoughtfulness, and then organization, sending out all those surveys, making sense of all the stuff coming in, and then activating these formal letters, which is a scary thing to do. Whatever line of work you're in, it's scary to be going to the chief midwife and all the people in charge. So well done, Deepa. You've achieved a huge amount. And I can't wait to see your next move. It's going to be fantastic. So anyone who's got a question, just put it into the Facebook question. It'll come through. This is what I'm looking over here. It'll come through to me in about a quarter of an hour's time when we have questions. Okay, so thank you, Deepa. I'm now going to move along seamlessly to our lovely Dr. Sally Pezaro. Have I pronounced that correctly, Sally?
Yes. That's how most people pronounce it.
Okay. Who is a senior lecturer and is also the academic midwife, known as the academic midwife in her Twitter life, at the School of Nursing, Midwifery and Health Centre for Arts, Memory and Communities. Crikey, that's a good heading on a badge at Coventry University. And Sally has been doing an extensive amount of work into midwives' wellbeing, as well as other things that she's done in her past that you'll know her from. So I don't want to take any of time, because her presentation is quite large and it's really important, just as Deepa's is. So welcome, Sally, and the screen is now yours.
Thank you very much. I'll just start sharing my screen. This is going to be a whistle-stop tour because there's so much to say and so much to share. But I'm going to try and talk about, first of all, as Deepa said, you're nurturing yourself with water and things, but there's also some evidence-based tips I'll share from Jill Mabon and some others doing things with Schwartz rounds and things about what you can do helping each other. So talk to your colleagues. They may well relate about what you're going through at the moment. Try and brainstorm problems together. It's not necessarily about being resilient, it's about understanding where you're at. Having some offload sessions where you could just get things off your chest with people. Try and boost other people's well-being. Remind them that they're safe, to talk with you here in the here and now. And it's really important to be praising other people and giving them positive feedback around this time. So I just wanted to share those tips with you as we go through some difficult times. And if you are asking people how they are, there's some kind of tips on how to ask the right questions from Watson in 2020. What have been your greatest challenges, hassles or frustrations? What are your greatest rewards? What does this mean to be in this team? If you don't know how to respond to someone when they tell you something's been really difficult, and just acknowledging that it must have been incredibly hard, and either saying you can't imagine how that must feel, or trying to put yourself in their shoes, being compassionate in that way. And you can use prompting questions as well to get people to open up a little bit if you think others are struggling at this time. And I just wanted to share with you some work I've done with other colleagues in the past. The references are all at the bottom of each slide. I'm talking about what shows workplace compassion during this time. Really important that management and leadership have no blame, no bullying cultures, investment in staff, recognition that people are human. In terms of value and culture, it's really important to feel heard, enjoy your work, be engaged. Small gestures of kindness are really important, and make sure that you've got personalised policies and procedures in place to really respecting people's rights to breaks, and treating people well when they're unwell, that kind of thing there. So just some almost further reading for you, if you like. But I'm really going to focus this on problematic substance use, this presentation, because earlier this week we had our research come out in relation to midwives' problematic substance use. And we know that there's human and financial costs associated with problematic substance use. I'm a panelist on the Nursing Midwifery Council, and we frequently see cases relating to drug and alcohol use come in front of the panels, and it's incredibly sad to see. And there's not been any research on it in midwifery populations. There's some in nursing, some in doctors, but the data on midwives is often merged with nurses. And the common findings are really that there's a lack of support, some fear, stigma, denial, unhealthy coping behaviours, and a need for targeted workplace support. So we're really at the beginning of this journey, and other people have looked at it before in terms of NMC data, but they haven't looked at it in terms of what it might mean. So why focus on midwives? Like I said, nurses and doctors have some research around this, but we know that the midwives have high rates of burnout, traumatic stress, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and these are the findings of Billy Hunter and Helen Spivey and Karen Sheen. I'm sure you're all aware of their work, but they kind of set the ground rules really as to, this is why we need to focus on midwives. This is the issue. So when I reviewed the literature with colleagues, again, you can see at the bottom who's worked with me on this, we only found 3 studies looking at midwives and substance use, problematic substance use, and they were in different countries. They weren't in the UK, but midwives generally had harmful daily alcohol consumption. There was a link between working hours and that alcohol consumption, and different features associated with it. And then with student midwives, it was really in terms of student nights and using it to escape really from the realities of what was going on in their training. So there's an ethical dilemma really in looking at this, and we've certainly found it really challenging to study this because, of course, I'm a registered midwife and I'm on the NMC panels, and if someone discloses to me that they're using substances to cope or they might not be fit to practice, I have a duty to do something about that. So and so do GPs and other people who understand what's going on. So it's really difficult for people to disclose without having any kind of repercussion. And especially doing this research, I had to make sure that everybody was anonymous, confidentiality was maintained, and I couldn't track anyone, even if I wanted to. So we maintained the principles of confidentiality and anonymity so that we could have an amnesty over anyone that was involved in this research, and we maintained that throughout. And we explored that in our ethical paper there at the bottom, with different colleagues. So just prior to the first 2020 lockdown, so March, we went to ask people via an anonymous online survey about their substance use. So not necessarily if it was problematic, just in general. And 623 midwives were surveyed, and we used several tools to look at their substance use and what the perceptions around substance use was. What did they think about other colleagues? What did they think of themselves? What did they think of it in general, etc.? But we had to stop this data collection just in response to the lockdown, because we knew that would change things dramatically for data collection. And again, this has just been published, so it's down at the bottom left there. You can see the publication if you want to go and have a look at the results in more details. But generally, just over a quarter of the sample did screen positive for problematic substance use, and that was in related to alcohol and a range of other drugs. It occurred really in response to work-related stress, they said, anxiety, bullying, traumatic clinical incidents, to maintain their functioning, to sleep, to wake up, that kind of thing. And then 11% of those affected indicated that they had sought help, but 27% said they should have done, but they didn't. And the reasons they said they didn't was because they just feared repercussions, shame, stigma. There were practicalities and perceived lack of support, either that they didn't think it was there or they didn't think it was needed. And then 10% of the sample reported that they'd attended work under the influence of alcohol, and 6% had attended work under the influence of drugs. So that's obviously got implications for the quality of care delivered. And then 37% said that they were actually concerned about a colleague's substance use, as someone else they were working with in the midwifery profession. But most of the perceptions were compassionate towards getting people better, etc. But there were a minority of stigmatizing attitudes displayed, which actually deterred more midwives from coming forward and seeking help. So they were quite dangerous, really. So In terms, I'm just going to share with you a few quotes here because I'm so excited to share these quotes because I haven't been able to because it hasn't been published. So this is some of our data. And the reasons for use, they were talking about stigma. Following traumatic clinical incident at work a few years ago, I started using weed and booze to cope. Work is hard, it triggers my anxiety, but I'm trapped. And trapped was definitely a theme they felt because they couldn't seek help. And they just had to keep on coping however they were, to either sleep or work or wake up, etc. And then in relation to concern about colleagues, they talk about midwives coming on the early shift after a heavy night drinking. They're shaking, they're impaired, and they're just trying to get through the shift. And then worryingly, colleagues addicted to alcohol have been named and shamed by other colleagues rather than helped and supported, and they've classed that as bullying. Everyone else is looking on, has learned from that. Now nobody asks for help. So we can see the implications of really not being compassionate towards people who have these problematic substance use. And they felt trapped. They've seen other people named and shamed rather than helped, so they can't afford to lose their job or their reputation, so they struggle on. They don't come forward and seek help, which is really, really scary. For obvious reasons, we can think about the implications of someone practicing in this sense. And then these stigmatizing attitudes, there's never an excuse. Midwives impaired by substances should be named and shamed. So this is a senior midwife saying, they should be struck off. There's no room for weakness. People are suspended. They told the press, they went to the press about somebody. And I've heard more stories about this since I've been doing the research. More people have come forward with stories of a similar nature. And then, another midwife just saying, they're just playing the mental health card once they've been found out. It's just an excuse for their own mistakes. So quite difficult responses there. But compassionately, people were saying, they need treatment programs, they need help, they need support. I'm really pleased this research is being done. They need to feel that they can seek help. They need to have that reduced stigma, because that's going to make maternity services safer overall. If people can get better, retain their fitness to practice, regain their fitness to practice if they've lost it, and continue in our wonderful profession, delivering excellence in care every day. But of course, now we've had the COVID pandemic going on for over a year. It's not over yet, as we've been talking about this evening, and it's going to have depleted frontline healthcare workers. And there's suggestions in the literature that it may have exacerbated problematic substance use in healthcare staff. So we got ethical approval to run the survey again. So a second survey, part 2, which is open now, to see whether things have changed now, whether whether midwives are using more substances, less substances, for different reasons, different varieties, and how that's really playing out, so we could start to understand more, so that we can start to do more. So we're aiming to identify the rate of problematic substance use this time, explore the leaving intentions of midwives. So, are people thinking of staying or leaving in the profession? How are they seeking help now? Has the pandemic made them want to seek more help, less help, for what reasons? And how is this affecting their health at the moment? And then we're going to measure their work engagement as well, how engaged they feel in their work. And we're collecting this data now, as I said, to compare with those last year. We've been accepted to present our findings at the International Practitioner Health Summit in 2022. So all the results we get from that, all of the anonymous responses we get, we will be sharing at that Wounded Healer conference to be held at the Royal College of GPs. And if you decide to participate, which I really hope you do, we will ensure that your voice is heard while maintaining your anonymity. We couldn't find out who you were, even if we wanted to. And this is the information in the poster, and I will put the link to the survey in the chat, in the Facebook chat, when I come off this call, but it's there, and you can follow me on all social media channels, and I'll be sharing all the details of it. Share it on your social media channels too, please, with other midwives, so that we can get as many people as possible, whether they use substances or not, just to get that data in, so that we can really start to unravel this picture. It's never been done before, this type of research, and if we start to understand the problem, then we can start to address it, and make things safer for maternity staff, midwives, and the people in their care. So this second study is funded by the Iolanthe Trust. We won a Midwives Award for funding study recruitment, so we can go to, I could have media training because we anticipate that there might be some media attention around this research. Dissemination events so that we can attend conferences and get travel expenses paid, and bolster future plans really to co-create with the Royal Colleges, with the Nurse and Midwifery Council, anybody with an interest in this work coming together with us so that we can be solutions focused rather than blame focused, and really start to look at the problem. And I've whistle stopped through that, but I'm really happy to take questions. I'm sure there's been lots going on in the chat. And I will stop sharing now. But thank you. Sue's coming back yet?
Yeah, and thank you so much. Gosh, that was a whistle stop tour because there is a lot of information on those slides. And of course, just to remind people, you'll get all of this again, so you can kind of stash this away and look at it at your leisure, and especially get some of the references, which are really useful. So this is really hot off the press as well, because it's only just out. So really exciting, and thank you so much for sharing that, Sally. Just a query about the survey. Is this purely for UK midwives?
Yeah, for NMC registered midwives, first of all. We have got plans we've been in discussions with people in other countries, nurses as well as midwives, wanting to work with us to replicate the same survey in different countries so that we can see in different parts of the world how things might differ or change, with nurses and midwives being looked at together but separately, if you see what I mean, so that we could perhaps work together on a global solution, because obviously in different countries, midwives are facing different challenges. And midwives really although we're all midwives, in some countries their role is very different, so we need to take all of those things into consideration when we're looking at how midwives might be affected in different ways. But there's certainly plans to scale this up globally, to look at the issue and support midwives with something really concrete.
Okay, so is the survey purely for people who are using different substances? And when you start it, you might think about your glass of wine that you might have once a week or whatever.
Well, that's it. I mean, this is loads of people who took our survey last time didn't screen positive for problematic substance use, and that's fine. And even if you have, a glass of wine in the evening, you won't necessarily be scored as having a problem, problematic substance use. It would just be substance use. It's not problematic in any way. So that's why we want really all of the NMC registered midwives to undertake this survey, whether they teetotal or whatever, because then it makes the sample much more representative and we get a much clearer picture of that. So that's what we're really looking for here. And I know it's difficult for some people to talk about this or be honest or truthful about how much they might be drinking at the weekend or what have you, but there is no judgment, zero judgment, absolutely, from me or anyone else, and we couldn't trace you even if we wanted to. We're just interested in understanding so that we can make things safer, and help people where we can.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. I think that's very clear for people. So all of you listening, if you're based in the UK and you're on the NMC register, access the survey. How long would it take to complete then, Sally?
Well, obviously there's options for people to write their life story if they want to. Okay. But if you're just gonna go through it, then it's about 15 minutes, I would say.
Right, okay.
But there's options to tell us as much or as little as you want.
Fabulous. Okay, well, that's really helpful. Thank you. Well, you were saying that there are a few questions coming through, and audience, forgive me if I keep turning away because it's all on my other screen. Having two screens is very delicious sometimes, but it means I have to move away. Now, Lorna is she's asking a nice, easy question from me, which is, what's the title of the books again, and where can I get a copy? It's Jan Smith's Nurturing Maternity Staff, and the publisher is, crikey, it's Pinter Martin, I think, and available at all good bookshops, including that one down the river. Work that one out. And the other thing is safety, equity and engagement in maternity services. But that is not a book, it's just a report, and it is available on the resources page, which is available on online now. Okay, and I have a question from Eunice at Sally. Hi, Eunice, who says, a kind question. Maybe is there provision for water dispensers in labour suites? I think there's one for Deepa. And I guess that's looking at whether you have some, I mean, some delivery suites are very swishy and have big water coolers, and others don't have such fancy things. But
what was the question, Sue?
The question is, maybe is there provision for water dispensers in labour suites?
The thing is, when you're caring, for a mother who's giving birth, you don't get a water cooler in every room. Obviously, it's a little bit away, probably near the midwife station, and leaving the room as often as you want to. It takes you 2 seconds to get like a sip of water, but having to leave the room, repeatedly just for that purpose makes it difficult for the midwife. And also, maybe the mother would also feel, midwife's leaving the room a few times. I mean, it's a very simple solution to have your own water bottle labeled, closed, put away in the shelf. And you just have to move 2 meters away, remove your mask, put a straw in, you can gulp of water, put it back.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
I guess one day all labour rooms will have their own little water cooler. That would be very nice, especially really nice and cool. Thank you for that, Deepa. Okay, the question next is from Helena. Hi, Helena. She says, hi, Sally. Do you think the NMC should register how many clinical hours registered midwives do so that we're more aware of how many frontline midwives we have?
Well, I don't think the amount of hours would tell you how many midwives we have necessarily. And I'm not sure that's the NMC's role to be doing that. They're the regulator, so they're regulating the safety and quality of maternity care and the fitness to practice of registrants and maintaining the integrity of the register overall. So I'm not sure that would be useful necessarily. And I'm sure, like there's been lots of research on how many midwives are needed. You were talking about it earlier, Sue. I agree with you. I think we need more than 3,500. I would like to see so many more midwives so that we could support each other and we weren't struggling the way we were. And we were being compassionate towards each other. That's what I'd most likely to see, because when we're under pressure, we're burnt out, we're experiencing compassion fatigue, things. Royal colleges and all the foundations out there that are looking to improve the work lives of midwives, because I'd like to make things better overall.
And remember, I guess that, if you have snapped at someone, you can feel awful about it, and then you avoid them afterwards, whereas you should just say, oh crikey, I'm so sorry, and then just take it with one. I really like that slide you have, Sally, with the things that you can think about right at the beginning. That was a really good kind of pointer for us to think about.
I've taken them from other webinars I've been at and other conferences. Just those evidence-based tips I put into as many presentations as I can, because I just think they're just so simple but make such a difference.
We have to look after each other and ourselves. Okay, Claire Dale says, am I right in thinking your survey is only open to fully qualified midwives, not students? Good question.
At the moment, that is a good question. At the moment, yes, but I'm trying to connect with as many student midwives as I can, because you're all going to be, fingers crossed, on the register one day. And also we have plans to write books and put together collations of things for people to survive and thrive throughout their midwifery journey. So this survey, no, not for students at this time. But we will be working with students in future, definitely including them. And I want to connect with them along the journey so that we can work together to make the journey as amazing as it should be, because you're full of hope. Student Nursing Times Awards at the beginning of this week, the Student Midwife of the Year is phenomenal. They all were phenomenal. You are all phenomenal. So I want to keep you that way throughout. I don't want you to see you get burnt out as you progress. I don't want to see that compassion and fatigue creep in. So I'm definitely doing all I can to help with that.
So really, for the most important thing, I guess, for students is to be reading some of these materials. Some of you might want to do this as part of your dissertation work or a project work, but it certainly is important to know that this information's out there and it's going on, because that makes you a rounder midwife, ultimately, because you know the stresses. You can't hide from the fact it's a hard job, it's a hard role, and there's difficult times. But you also have to be aware that it's also a great job and a great role, and there are great times. It's just making sure we kind of reconnect those bits. So thank you, Claire, for that question. Really good question. Nim says, that was brilliant. Thank you, Nim. Could you share your presentation slides, please? They will be available to everybody after the event. These will be coming out over the airways. Well, not just the airways, the vision ways, or the Facebook over the next few days. So you will have access to those, all of them, all the way through. I did have another query for it also, because I know the funny thing is, I also, again on Twitter, I'm not saying I'm addicted to Twitter, but I probably am, because I picked up a clip this morning, because I know that in parts of the country things are really hard and midwives are really unhappy and stressed. And Leah Hazard, who many of you will know as an author also, and is a practicing midwife in Scotland, I think she's in Scotland, she asked over 3,000 midwives and students what they needed, and they said a bursary paid breaks, flexible shift patterns, an urgent review of induction policies, managers who do clinical shifts too, and suspension of continuity of care. Now, the last one, I'm not sure, but if people are feeling, that's the way people are feeling, that there's too many things going on, too much pressure. I don't know, what did you think of that, Sally? 3,000 midwives, that's what they're saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really kind of quick poll, isn't it, on Twitter? And that's why social media is so great, because we can just connect to get quick fire. Come on, what do we need to do? What do we need? It's brilliant. And yeah, I think that's really good feedback to give back to anyone in policy decision-making areas. I think there's a real swathe now of people focused on midwives, recognizing that they need to be valued. We need to be seated at more tables, have more leadership positions in academia, clinical areas, all of that, so that we can make it happen. These things that we're saying, and some of it's difficult, really difficult. The research we've done is so uncomfortable, it's so challenging, but it's worth it, because we deserve all of those things. Ultimately, we deserve it. We're awesome.
I almost want to finish there, but we can't yet. How about Deepa? I mean, I bet if you were asked the question, what you need now as a student midwife, I bet you'd say the bursary, because I think that's a big thing, and a big important thing. There's just one more thing to worry about, isn't it?
Yeah, I will have a 40,000 loan on my head as I qualify. I mean, what a huge number. And I had to look past that to actually have the will to get into the course, because that was a big obstacle. And at some point you put it behind you and say, okay, I will deal with it when I have to, because my love for midwifery overtakes that. But yes, a bursary would have been brilliant.
That's a huge thing. I mean, what that says to me, this whole thing, is that what we want is people who are listening to us. Because this comment about managers who do clinical shifts, and many managers do clinical shifts, to be fair, but it kind of makes me think some midwives are feeling they don't know what it's like, and many of them do know what it's like, but then the midwives aren't feeling it. I don't know if you wanted to make a comment on that. Deepa or Sally?
Having worked in a couple of London maternity trusts, I think communication is really important. I think when you're on a shift, like 12 and a half hour shift, you're not really thinking about what's happening behind the scenes, and they have their roles, their responsibilities, and the people they are answerable to as well. But I think communication from senior management to the people who are there during their shifts is really important to say, this is what we're doing to make things better for you. And yes, it's important to be visible where people are working.
No, that's beautiful. Actually, Deepa, that's beautifully put. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just checking if there's any more questions coming through. Juliet Samuel is saying, are we able to, hi Juliet, she's saying, are we able to utilize Sally's top tips as posters for notice boards within our clinical areas?
Well, I don't see why not. I mean, I've credited the authors of those tips, and I've kind of amalgamated it. And if you look at the references, there's hundreds and hundreds of tips. I've just kind of consolidated them into a few because we don't have much time, and also too much information is too much information. You need those short, snappy, this is what you could do, this is how you can ask if someone's okay. So over COVID, I've been on so many of these webinars, I've almost picked up tips from other people. So I think as long as you credit the same people the way I've credited them as to where you found them, then I'm sure they'll be happy to know that their knowledge and evidence-based practice is being used in a real life setting.
I think the key thing, actually, I mean, posters are great, and we're very good at putting posters places, but it's kind of some of those things we need to try out. So Juliet, pick out a couple and try them out tomorrow morning, because then you start actually doing the things that you need to do, like being kind to somebody and asking them how they are, and not just saying something like, it's very tempting to say, you okay? You're okay, aren't you? Rather than saying, how are you? So the idea of these open questions that come along. No, that was fabulous. I'm just checking another comment. So thank you for that, Sally. Rhiannon Marie, for me in Wales, it would be great not to have our bursary and student loan counted as income from Universal Credit. And Universal Credit's big in the news at the moment, isn't it? Because they're taking away that £20. It forces us to work to pay for our expenses because the bursary, etc., is taken away, which once again adds even more pressure. That's absolutely so, Rhiannon. And now Caroline says, how do we engage managers to understand our clinical workload? I guess it depends. I know Sally will probably answer on this. So I'll give it to Sally.
Well, I think a lot of what Deepa was saying was it's communication. Communication is key. And I think, it's really easy to forget sometimes that we are all actually on the same team. There's there shouldn't be anyway, any factions of midwives, managers, clinicians, academics against each other. We're all working together. I certainly try and be inclusive. And I think if you can communicate that with your manager and remember that they are on your team, you are on their team. And also, to be fair, they've probably got pressures that we don't know about. We've got pressures that they don't know about. And it's a two-way thing. But ultimately, I think if we could all remember we're on the same team and keep that line of communication open, perhaps there is some feedback loop about, do you realise the pressures we're under? Yes, I do, but I can't do anything because I've got this pressure over here. And I think that would increase everyone's understanding and generate some compassion around what people are dealing with, because I really do believe we're all on the same team.
Brilliant. Well, because we need to be compassionate for our managers as well. Beautifully put. And I think you and Deepa complemented each other brilliantly. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. I know that Sally is probably going to go on to social media after this and have a look at some of your comments. So thank you very much to both of you for joining us. And I will say that resources are still available on the website, and you'll get everything coming through on Facebook on Friday. And next week, I think we've got now, what have we got on the programme? Something delicious somewhere. No, you're going to have to find out. So I put it on a bit of paper and it's not here. You'll just have to wait and see. something delicious. But in the meantime, stay safe and well, look after yourselves and your loved ones. Practice one or two of those key tips that Sally drew out in one of her slides. Practice what Deepa was saying with your water bottles. Make sure you're fully equipped, preferably not plastic if you can help it. Also, do remember to book for the Maternity and Midwifery Festival on the 23rd of November. That's the Scottish festival. There's also a Student Experience Festival on the 10th of November, which is going to be really exciting. That's based in Manchester. And Midwifery Education Conference also on the 10th of November. So it's really exciting. So I'll say good night to you. I'll see you next Wednesday, every Wednesday for the Maternity and Midwifery Hour. And just to say good night, be safe and stay well.
The Maternity and Midwifery Forum brings you Matflix, video streaming from maternity experts. All your CPD and revalidation needs met in one place. Our expertly curated box sets are the perfect way to engage with the latest thinking, issue by issue. They make revalidation easy and are the perfect accompaniment to any project or university coursework. In addition to video from expert speakers across maternity and midwifery, there is easily accessible research and links to the latest government policy documents. Our reflective questions at the end are the perfect primer for your revalidation. In the same way the Maternity and Midwifery Forum provides certificates to show that you have attended these festivals, we can provide certificates for those who have consumed the content of a box set and submitted their written answers to the reflective questions provided by our curator, Dr. Jenny Hall. Midwives, maternity professionals and students, do not miss out. Subscribe to Matflix today. Box sets are just £17.50 each, or access to them all starts at £8.99 per month, and only £5.99 for Maternity and Midwifery Festival attendees. Students pay just £2.99 per month, and only £2.49 for Student Maternity and Midwifery Festival attendees. Check out the box sets at www.matflix.co.uk.